I'm Kathy with a C.
And I'm Kathy with a K.
And this is Killer Destinations. Today's destination is Norton Shores, Michigan. Located on the shores of Lake Michigan in Muskegon County, this city has more than 25,000 residents and was originally organized as a township in 1845. It was named in honor of Colonel Amos Norton, a Canadian patriot who was implicated in the Canadian Rebellion. It would take more than a century for the township to become a city. The city is well known for its natural scenic beauty and recreational opportunities. Norton Shores has 6 miles of shoreline along Lake Michigan, so boating, fishing, and kayaking are favorite pastimes. There are also towering sand dunes that are perfect for hiking. Today, Norton Shores is best described as a rural, suburban environment with a balance of industrial, commercial, and residential development. The city has been successful in attracting high-tech manufacturers, which add to the employment opportunities of the community, and it's noted for some of the most distinctive homes in the area, with lakefront estates, mid-century ranches, and cozy beach cottages. The city enjoys a crime rate well below the national average, which is why, in 2013, with the disappearance of a young mother, the residents of Norton Shores and Greater Muskegon County were left horrified as big city problems found their way into this idyllic community.
On Friday, April 26, 2013, just after 11 p.m., a customer walked into the Exxon gas station Mini Mart on Sternberg Road in Norton Shores. He had just pumped some gas and momentarily waited at the counter, then called out looking for the cashier. But he was met with dead silence. This man was feeling concerned, so he called 911 at 11:15 p.m. He told the Norton Shores Police Dispatch that he was at an empty Exxon gas station and that it was unlocked and the lights were on, but he thought something had to be wrong because nobody was there. Within minutes, Norton Shores police were on the scene, including Detective Sergeant Michael Kasher. It was clear that someone had been there, and it looked like they'd been counting out the till and cleaning to get the store ready for closing. Nothing appeared to have been taken from the gas station, and there were no signs of a struggle. So dispatch called the owner of the gas station, who in turn called the day shift worker, a woman named Susan. Susan told detectives that Jessica Haringa was supposed to be working the late shift that evening, and this was confirmed when officers found Jessica's purse with her wallet and ID still in it. Jessica also had $400 in her wallet, so money was clearly not a motive for her disappearance. But then Susan told Detective Sergeant Kasher something else. She said she and her husband were riding motorcycles and happened to be driving by the Exxon at about 11 p.m. This was just about 15 minutes before the 911 call. She noticed a silver minivan outside the rear door of the convenience store and thought it was strange. So she and her husband turned around and parked in a nearby lot to get a better look at the minivan and the driver.
So, Kath, this area, if you could just picture it, the Exxon gas station was pretty much alone on this road. There was a small shop next to it that I also think was car-related, but this was surrounded by flat parcels of land.
Like
and so,
dirt?
Yeah. I mean, like kind of scrub, but not trees or anything like that. It's flat land. It's open. And, there's a couple houses here and there and shops, down the road, but it's 2 lanes in each direction, very open road, very, very visible. So as you're driving by, you can see the rear of the Exxon.
So Susan tells this detective that she watched the minivan and she saw that the back hatch was open. She then saw the driver slam it shut, open it again, and readjust something, then slam it shut again. The driver then left the Exxon and actually drove past Susan and her husband, then took a right turn at Grand Haven Road. Susan said she thought the van was a Chrysler Town & Country or a Dodge Caravan, and described the driver as a white male, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, heavy set, and about 30 to 40 years old. He also had wavy brown hair with blonde highlights, and it was parted in the middle. And Kathy, that to me is amazing because it's late at night. I mean, I know the Exxon's going to be lit up, but she got a lot of details.
Yeah, the Exxon was very well lit, but yeah, she was studying this guy. And then when he drove past them to leave, she got another look.
But despite the look she got at the driver, she didn't get a license plate. So, knowing that time was not on their side, police quickly called in a sketch artist so that they could create a composite while Susan's memory was still fresh. But while at the scene, nothing inside the store gave clues as to what happened to Jessica. Then detectives scoured the outside, and on the ground, not far from where Susan described the van being parked, they found 2 watch batteries and a small black square piece of plastic on the ground. When they turned this piece of plastic over, it had a label with information showing that it was a battery cover for a laser sight for a German Walter P22 handgun. Detectives also found a drop of blood on the ground, so they collected a sample. Next, they drove up Grand Haven Road where the van was last seen in order to look for surveillance video. At a coin store and a tavern, they got lucky. Both had footage showing a van going up the road between 11:10 and 11:17 p.m., but the video was grainy and in black and white, so the color of the van was unclear. Detectives also knew that the last customer to make a purchase at the Exxon had a time-stamped receipt showing 10:52 p.m. So whatever happened to Jessica happened between 10:52 and the 911 call at 11:15, a window of fewer than 20 minutes.
On the night Jessica disappeared, she was 25 years old and the mother of a 3-year-old boy who loved Spider-Man. Jessica was engaged to her son's father and living in Muskegon, about 5 miles from the Exxon where she worked. Jessica was a local girl with a family who had deep roots in Western Michigan. According to an article in the Muskegon Chronicle written by Lynn Moore, by early Saturday morning, now this would have been the following morning, Jessica's fiancé broke the horrible news to Jessica's mother, Shelley, that she was missing. So family members immediately gathered. They were completely in shock and scared and heartbroken, and they started creating a plan. So the first thing they did was create missing persons posters, and they began organizing search parties. And so Kath, local businesses helped with the expenses of the flyers and, anything that required any kind of monetary contribution. And the local Hampton Inn provided rooms for her family members because people were coming in from all over the place.
I love that.
I know. That's super cool. And so Jessica's little son was simply told that his mother was at work. And he would be, sad at night asking for her when he was going to bed. And they just kept saying, she's at work, mommy's at work. And they did that for quite a time. Now, at 5'1" and 110 pounds, Jessica was very slight. And her mother had expressed concerns over her working the late shift by herself. But Jessica was like, listen, Mom, I can handle anything. I'm going to be fine. Don't be concerned. I'm not concerned. And because of her daughter's attitude, Jessica's mom told reporters that she believed a regular customer must have come into the store and kidnapped Jessica under the guise of asking for help. She basically told reporters that if somebody were a regular customer and they needed help, Jessica would have helped them. And she knew that Jessica never would have voluntarily left her son and fiancé. So the press widely publicized the kidnapping, and of course, residents were shocked and horrified that something like this had happened in their small community. And the DNA in the blood found in the Exxon parking lot came back to Jessica. A task force was created with the Norton Shores Police Department, the Muskegon County Sheriffs, and state police. So detectives continued looking for video footage all over the place of the van, and they published the composite sketch. And they also released, I believe, the grainy video from the coin shop and the bar, the video of the van, so that people could look at it. And detectives also gathered ownership records from Department of Motor Vehicle databases and interviewed people, basically anyone in the surrounding area who owned a minivan. And so they believed it was silver because that's how it was described by Susan, but they weren't sure. So they were just, they threw the net wide. Her family told reporter Heather Lynn Peter of the Muskegon Chronicle that the family was discouraged and disheartened, but they still felt that Jessica was alive. They just wanted her found and brought home. But with leads going nowhere, eventually the task force was disbanded, but Detective Sergeant Kasher continued to serve as the lead Norton Shores detective on the case. And Kath, he ran ongoing what they call proof of life searches in various databases. For example, Credit Bureau, DMV, has she taken out any credit cards, that kind of stuff. And he did this over several years, but these searches never revealed any signs that Jessica was still alive.
Fast forward to June of 2014. This is 14 months after Jessica's disappearance and about 15 miles away from the Exxon Mini Mart. A couple driving on a rural road in Dalton Township came across a young woman lying on the side of the road. They pulled over to help and noticed her clothes were askew, with her shirt up a little bit and her bottoms a little bit down. But once they got out of the car, it quickly became clear that this young woman was deceased, and they called 911. They believed she'd been hit by a car because she had head trauma, and sheriff's deputies who arrived at the scene shared the same belief. The woman was identified as 36-year-old Rebecca Bletch, a married mother with one daughter and one stepdaughter. She worked as a physical therapist at a local nursing home, and she was really highly regarded by her coworkers. Her husband and kids were not home at the time her body was discovered on the road, but they told police that she must have gone out for a walk or a jog because Rebecca was only found 3/4 of a mile from her house. Rebecca's autopsy revealed that she had been shot in the head. Fragments from 3 bullets were collected as evidence. And as you can imagine, the community was shocked. Rebecca's family, her parents, and her siblings could not imagine who could have done such a thing. They described Rebecca as a dedicated wife and mom who adored her husband, her daughter, and her stepdaughter. She was loving, she was happy, and none of what was going on made any sense to them.
And Kath, she was the oldest, I believe, of 4 girls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were 4 girls in her family. And I saw interviews of her sisters, and they were crushed. I mean, it was so horrific and senseless, and they were just crushed.
As the oldest of 4 girls, I have to imagine that Rebecca was formidable.
Just like your older sister.
The one of 2, yes. And formidable isn't the word I would use, but let's go with that. Love you, sissy, mwah, mwah.
We're going to be generous. But yeah, no, especially her youngest sister. I saw an interview of the youngest, and she was saying that Rebecca always just was like a caretaker, and she basically just felt this like a gap in her life, like a hole in her life. This person who had always cared for her and still cared for her into adulthood was taken.
And, let all the girls in the house, anything that they did, right or wrong or fun or not, I'm sure she was the head of all this.
Dude, sisterhood.
Exactly.
For sure.
Besides, if my sister is like that and there's only 2 of us, what do you like, oldest of 3?
Okay, I was an asshole.
Actually, you're older than...
I was a jerk until I was about probably 15. After that, I was fine. Once I grew out of my violent puberty years,
I was think she
okay.
Did. Anyway, so none of this made any sense to her family and friends, and a reward was offered for information leading to a suspect, but nothing ever came in that deputies could hang their hat on.
So detectives never put Jessica's case and Rebecca's case together. Then, in April of 2016, 3 years after Jessica's disappearance and 2 years after Rebecca's brutal murder, something happened that broke both cases wide open. A 16-year-old girl named Madison, who lived in the city of North Muskegon, and this was about 10 miles from where Jessica disappeared, It's actually pretty equidistant between Jessica's disappearance and Rebecca's murder. Anyway, 16-year-old Madison was walking home from a party. And so Kath, I saw an interview of this girl on YouTube, and I believe it was for like a Lifetime A&E special. I can't remember. You know, it happened years ago, this interview. But anyway, Madison was saying that she and her friends had been partying in this very rural and wooded area.
As one does.
As one does.
And I'm actually not being sarcastic.
No, exactly.
Seriously.
And there were a lot of areas, like I actually looked at like a Google Earth of the area, and North Muskegon looks like kind of a cool little city. I read that it was like blue collar industrial at the time. I have no idea if it still is, but it looked like a neat little place. But there were a lot of rural and wooded areas. Anyway, according to this interview, into the wee hours of their morning, and nobody in the interview said she was partying, but I'm sure they were all partying because they were like,
why do you go out to a wooded area if you're not doing that?
Yeah. So anyway, so the guy who was supposed to take her home had fallen asleep inside of his locked car, and his keys were in his pocket, and they were banging on the car and nobody could wake him up. So Madison decided, forget it. I'm just going to walk home. It's only going to take me like 20 minutes. And she sets off. And Kath, she walks for hours.
Okay, really quickly, for her to walk through dark, I'm sure there were no streetlights, areas in the middle of the night by herself, she is clanking at 16.
Or she's doing it and she's terrified.
Well, no, but even then,
yes.
she's still doing it. She could have just like crawled under his car and slept there till he woke up.
Which would have been me.
Yeah, me too.
Sure.
I wouldn't have walked through that.
No. But anyway, so Madison got lost and she walked for hours. So as the sun is coming up, she is tired, she's upset, she's crying a little bit because she doesn't know where she is, and there were no houses nearby. Now, Kath, I actually looked at a map, like I said, and it appeared to me that she went in the exact opposite direction of civilization.
Oh, poor baby girl.
I know. And so thinking a 20-minute walk, and here it is hours and hours and hours later, okay? So at about 7:30 in the morning, she's walking on this road and there are no houses around, and a van pulls up. This guy rolls down his passenger window and goes, "Hey, are you okay?" And she's upset and she says, "I can't find my way home." And so he goes, "Oh, well, do you want a ride? Hop in." And she goes, No, I just want to use your cell phone." So he goes, "Oh, well, come on in, hop in." And she did say in this interview that he looked harmless, but she also said she knew she shouldn't have gotten in, but she was so desperate she wanted to use his phone. And so her whole goal was to call her mother and just go, "Mom, I'm lost. You got to come find me," whatever. Anyway, so she gets into his van. He then immediately rolls up her window and locks the doors and drives away. So Madison is on high alert and she's like, "Can I use the phone now?" And he kind of ignores her for a second. And she's like, "Can I use your phone now?" And he goes, "Oh, my cell phone's dead." So then she's like, "Okay, well, can you just pull over and let me out?" And he ignores her and he keeps driving. So she knows that things are going from bad to worse. And she starts begging, "Please pull over. Just let me out." And she's begging and she's getting more upset and more upset. He pulls a gun out and points it at her. So she continues begging, "Please, please." And she says she has this realization, he's going to kill me. This man's going to kill me. I have to save myself. So her fight or flight reaction kicked in, and she quickly unlocks the door and jumps out of the moving van. So she hits the concrete, she rolls and gets right up and starts hauling ass. Off in the distance, there's a house, and she is running for her life. And as she's running, she turns around to see if he's chasing her, and she sees him standing next to the van, pointing a gun at her. And so she is hauling ass and she is screaming hysterically. And she runs up onto this porch where there was a young woman sitting. And basically the girl opens the front door enough just to let the two of them in. She slams the front door, she locks it, and she calls 911. So the dispatch is getting information from the woman who is saying, "There's a young girl in my house. She said that some man tried to get her into the van, da-da-da-da-da." So anyway, so the operator says, "I want to speak with her." So Madison gets on the phone and she is hysterical. And she's saying, "He tried to take me into my van. I just want my mom. I just want my mom. I want my mom. It was terrible. I actually listened.
Did you listen to it?
I listened to the call and I just felt so bad for her. Anyway, so she's hysterical and the dispatch guy's like, "Don't hang up, stay on the phone," that kind of thing. So police arrive at the scene and they're trying to calm Madison down and get her story, and at the same time talk to the young woman who was at the house and see what she observed. And so they transport Madison to the hospital, but not, of course, before she frantically calls her mother and says, please meet me at the hospital.
Can you imagine being that mom?
No, I can't imagine getting that call. Can't imagine. So anyway, Madison goes off to the hospital and detectives canvass the scene, and they're looking at the side of the road where she said that the van stopped. And they discover 2 fully intact live .22 caliber rounds on the ground where they think the driver got out. So, Kat, this means that probably he was trying to shoot and the gun jammed. And so he had probably had to pull back. I can't even think of what it's called. Yeah, pull back the slide, pop out the cartridge. For whatever reason, his gun wasn't working. And, so he probably racked the slide twice and, these rounds
popped out.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so the cops are like, holy hell, this girl could have been killed. We don't know who this guy is, but he meant business. And so they went up and down this road. And again, they're looking for video footage. And Kat, they come across a blueberry farmer who goes, oh yeah, I have a camera.
That's crazy. They're in the middle of rural nowhere.
Totally.
No homes.
Yeah.
Well, except for maybe 1 or 2. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so they watch his video feed and they see it's like this pristine video of the van pulling into his property and making a U-turn. And so they can't make out the license plate, but they very clearly see the make and model and aftermarket parts on a silver van.
So they got the color too.
Yes. And they were able to narrow down the year. So now they have very specific information. And they go to the DMV databases and they narrow down all the van owners in the area that could have been the culprit. And they create a photo lineup. Now, they had already narrowed who they thought it was. And so they got people in this photo lineup who look similar. You have to do that. They brought it to Madison, and she immediately identified a 46-year-old forklift driver named Jeffrey Willis. And detectives interviewed him, and he denied knowing Madison or attempting to abduct her, but he was arrested anyway. And a search warrant was issued for his van and his home.
When detectives searched Jeffrey Willis's van, they found a metal toolbox with a padlock, and inside they found syringes and insulin, a human anatomy diagram with injection points, handcuffs, rope, chains, sex toys, a gag, black Reebok gloves, Viagra, cameras, and bullets. My question, Kathy, is how big was this toolbox?
Honestly, it wasn't that big.
For a van? Like, I would expect it to be one of those, like, with multiple drawers, like the kind your husband has in his garage.
Right. Honestly, pictures of it, I wasn't impressed.
So all of these items were collected and sent to the crime lab for processing, and police and prosecutors referred to this as Jeffrey Willis's rape kit. In that same toolbox, police found a Walter P22 pistol and shell casings. Now, the serial number on the gun had been obscured, but they were able to recover it. And so, tracing the gun back to the point of sale, they found out that the gun had actually been stolen from the prior owner. And the prior owner said that she purchased the gun with a Walter laser sight. And remember the battery cover they found behind the mini mart where Jessica was taken from? They believe the battery cover was connected to the laser sight that was originally on the gun. Now, in the search of Willis's computer, officers found a folder titled VICS, V-I-C-S. Detectives believed it was short for the word victims. And Kath, in this folder, detectives found subfolders that were specific to Jessica Haringa and Rebecca Bletch. Kath, this was the first time that detectives put together that the man who kidnapped Madison was responsible for the disappearance and deaths of Jessica and Rebecca. They never thought to connect them before.
Exactly. And so when they find Rebecca's name, because they thought this is so random that this woman was shot on the side of the road. So what they think is that he tried to abduct Rebecca and she fought back And she was like,
And he couldn't leave a witness.
Exactly. So they realized like, oh my gosh, we had been looking at her murder the wrong way.
And that was actually my thought when Madison was running and she said she looked back and saw him aiming the gun at her. Of course he's not going to let her go.
Nope.
He can't afford it.
He can't afford it.
So, Kath, these folders were labeled by their initials and the dates of the crimes against them. The folders contained photos of both victims that he had downloaded from Facebook, along with Jessica's missing poster and news articles about both women. The computer also contained thousands of images of violent pornography, and there were also videos he'd taken of women, but it was clear that he had done so surreptitiously. DNA analysis of the contents of Willis's toolbox revealed his DNA and fingerprints on the items and Rebecca Bletch's DNA. This is the woman who had been shot on the side of the road. Her DNA was on the black Reebok glove as well as other items in the toolbox. And when ballistics came in from the Walter P22 that had been found in the van, it matched the bullet fragments from Rebecca's head. They also confirmed that the battery cover found at Jessica's abduction site would have been the battery cover for the laser sight that would have been on this gun. And the 2 unspent rounds found where Madison jumped out of the van were the same type of ammunition used for this Walter P22. And they were similar to the shell casings found in Willis's toolbox.
Jeffrey Willis had separate legal actions for the murders of Jessica Herringa and Rebecca Bletch, and a third case for his attempted kidnapping of Madison. The trial for Rebecca's murder went forward first in 2017, followed by Jessica's in 2018. And Cap, as you can imagine, the prosecution in each trial had a ton of circumstantial evidence, much of which overlapped. And so, Kath, regarding Jessica, it turned out that Willis had been to the Exxon station on at least a dozen occasions while Jessica was working, including on the night before her abduction. And coworkers actually took the stand and recalled Willis coming to work with deep scratches on his face and arms shortly after Jessica's disappearance. And Jeffrey Willis had actually been interviewed in 2013 because he had a van. Remember when Jessica disappeared?
He had the same minivan.
Exactly. And they were just interviewing all these van owners. Well, he was one of the guys that was interviewed. And he told detectives that he had attended a card game at a shop near the gas station and then went straight home. And he allowed police to search his van. And the notes the detective made in 2013 said his van had just been cleaned.
Huh.
I know. So now by Rebecca and Jessica's trials, they had cell phone records. So they had call records and they had cell tower data. And they showed by the cell tower data that he had lied initially with respect to Jessica and his whereabouts on the night of her disappearance. The cell tower data showed him near the Exxon gas station just after 11 p.m. on the night of Jessica's disappearance, and by 11:23, they placed Willis at an empty home he inherited from his grandfather. And this was where detectives believed he murdered Jessica. And this home was pretty much empty, and Willis was really the only relative who used it. And he kept the property padlocked, and really all it had, because they eventually did search it, it had cleaning products and a ton of bleach. But it's where they later found a note in Willis's handwriting, which included a rape kit checklist. And that checklist coincided with the contents of the lockbox in the van. And one of the things I read, Kath, was that they also found, and I can't remember if it was at this grandfather's property or at his home, but they found a list, and it was a list that had a bunch of serial killers' names on it. And he had 3 people circled. Okay. I wish I could remember which ones they were, but they were all California serial killers, and 2 of them worked as a partner. And I want to say they were called the Toolbox Killers, but don't hold me to it. But each of the serial killers he circled were cruising California in the 70s, picking up, I believe it was women, in a van and torturing them, raping them, killing them. But anyway, so prosecutors also introduced at Rebecca's trial, because remember, Rebecca's trial went first, the events that took place with Madison, as well as the disappearance of Jessica, in order to prove that this was his MO, this was his pattern and practice, And so they were able to get all this evidence in at Rebecca's trial because they believed that he was trying to abduct her. Anyway, so prosecution, of course, brought out the fact that Rebecca's DNA was on certain items in the locked toolbox. And at Willis's trial for the murder of Rebecca, Madison took the stand, and she was a very compelling witness for the prosecution. And she had a very big impact on the jury. And she was also terrified and had PTSD from the whole experience.
Of course.
And exactly. But she was brave. So the biggest things connecting Willis to Rebecca were the bullet fragments found in her head and her DNA in the toolbox. So now it's the defense's turn. And what does the defense do in this trial? They blame the murders on Willis's cousin, a guy named Kevin Bloom, who happened to be a corrections officer. And Willis's attorney basically said he stalked Rebecca and then murdered her using a gun borrowed from Willis. Okay. And so according to the defense theory, after the murder, Kevin returned the gun to Willis's toolbox, and in doing so, got Rebecca's DNA on the Reebok gloves and the other items.
So basically he's saying her DNA was transferred.
Exactly. It was transferred to these other items because he was at the murder scene. And so why would the defense bring up cousin Kevin as a potential killer? It is because once Willis was arrested, cousin Kevin came forward and was interviewed for hours by police. And slowly over time, he broke down and told them that Willis had showed him the dead body of Jessica Herringa in the basement of the house he inherited from his grandfather. And he drew a diagram as to how she was situated in the basement and all this kind of stuff. And then he told them that he parked his car in Willis's driveway. Willis transported Jessica's body into the van, and the two of them drove to an area where she was buried. Now, police searched the area that he said Jessica was buried, but no body was found. And later, cousin Kevin said he lied about the whole thing. So despite not finding the body, cousin Kevin was convicted of accessory after the fact to murder. And he wound up spending about 15 months in prison.
I wonder if he lost his corrections job.
I would imagine.
I would hope so.
I wonder if they let him guard himself.
Well, he's clearly not good at it.
Exactly. Anyway, so November 2nd of 2017, Willis was found guilty of the 2014 murder of Rebecca Bletch. So, Kath, as you know, sentencing hearings allow the victims' families to have their victim impact statements read into the record. And in this courtroom, the family actually stayed in the gallery and stood up. But before they did, Willis asked the judge if he could leave.
The judge let him?
Oh, he did.
Oh my gosh.
So as Willis was leaving the court and Rebecca's three sisters, I believe it was her three sisters, were standing up in the gallery ready to make statements, he blew them a kiss and then flipped them off.
I can't believe that.
I know.
Did the bailiff shoot him?
He seriously should have.
Or at least stunned him.
I know, but no.
He had to have had a taser with him.
You know what they did? This is so freaking beautiful. It took 2 hours to drive him back to the jail that he was in. And I want to say it was in Jackson. I can't remember, but it was like a 2-hour drive. Anyway, the deputies that were driving him played the victim impact statements over and over and over the entire ride.
Okay, both those deputies need promotions and raises, and we heart them.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, they're my heroes.
That is like...
That's perfect.
Oh, you think you don't want to hear this? Yeah.
Huh. Too bad you walked out, but here's what you missed.
Exactly. So the judge sentenced Willis to LWOP, and then 7 months later, he was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Herringa and got handed another LWOP.
Once the 2 murder convictions were secured, Kath, they actually dropped the case involving Madison's kidnapping. As you had said, this young woman so bravely testified at Rebecca's trial and was pivotal in securing Willis's conviction and leading to a second LWOP.
The fact of the matter is, it was because of her. It was because of her
courage,
having the nads to throw herself from a freaking vehicle as it was driving down a road to escape this.
And run as if her life depended on it, because it did.
Right. And without her saving herself and picking him out of a lineup, this guy probably would have not been caught, and the murders of Rebecca and Jessica would never have been connected.
Absolutely. And Kath, that's not all though. Just weeks ago, so in late June 2026, Jeffrey Willis was back in court asking that his convictions be set aside and a new trial ordered. Now, despite many unsuccessful appeals, Willis just hasn't given up. And at the June appearance, his attorney challenged the ballistics report used during both trials. The attorney said that 3 bullet wounds were found on Rebecca, but she argued that only 2 bullets were recovered and sent to a Michigan State Police lab for examination. And the attorney said, well, a 3rd bullet was later recovered, but it was improperly introduced into evidence as the prosecution's effort to just cover their bases. So, if we're gambling women, and we are, we're betting on a denial of these motions, but we will keep you posted.